Charles Dickens famously observed that sometimes the law is an ass. At other times, though, it's much, much worse. 3 years ago, 68-year-old grandmother Beth Stavely was stabbed to death by her partner of 20 years, Dennis Wakefield. Police charged him with murder, but the case never made it to trial in the normal criminal system. Instead, the whole matter was dealt with in just 30 minutes in the Queensland Mental Health Court. That meant Wakefield, who'd never previously been diagnosed with a mental illness, went from being a killer to a patient. And today, it also means he's living back out in the community. And that has a lot of people very worried. Until last week, the elderly residents of the Riverview Gardens retirement home near Ipswich, Queensland, had no idea they'd been living with a mentally ill killer. The man sitting with them at dinner is Dennis Wakefield. Less than 3 years ago, he stabbed to death the love of his life, Beth Stavely. Not even the Salvation Army, which runs the nursing home, knew about Wakefield's violent past until we told them. The Dennis Wakefield case defies belief. It reveals a legal and mental health system that's lost its way, one where the mental well-being of a killer has overtaken the rights of the victim, her family, and indeed the rest of the community, including the folk in this home.
It appears that this guy's gotten away with it and that we can't have any kind of justice, if you want, for our mother.
She lived for those kids, didn't she?
Absolutely.
Certainly her world there.
As if losing their mother in such a violent way wasn't bad enough,
She was proud.
Jason and Aaron Stavely now have to try to understand how Dennis Wakefield is back on the streets. They can't.
The punishment, it's not fitting with the nature of the crime. We're talking about taking a life.
But the law says he's mentally ill. He did that when he wasn't well. He can't be blamed for it. Do you understand that?
Then why is he out in society? No, I don't understand that.
Sonia Anderson knows the Stavely's anguish.
What you doing?
Her daughter, Bianca Gervin, was strangled to death by her mentally ill boyfriend, Rhys Austin, 7 years ago.
I want Queensland to stop pushing mental health killers back into our community. The ones that are violent, that they deem as mentally ill, keep them away from our people. Please stop pushing them back into society.
Beth Stavely and Dennis Wakefield were soulmates and until 2014 had happily lived together on the Gold Coast for 20 years.
A laugh that'd fill a room. She was great. She loved life. Very kind. Lived for us. Lived for her grandchildren.
This is where Beth and Dennis lived. In 2014, the only inkling of any trouble was arguments the couple were having about selling their home and moving into a retirement village. Beth wanted to, Dennis didn't.
He was very adamant about not leaving.
Then one day in June, Dennis suddenly cancelled the daily newspaper delivery. And you see that as deliberation, as premeditation, don't you?
He's certainly thinking about it, Ross, for quite some time.
4 days later, on Friday, the 6th of June, the family received, out of the blue, a text message from Wakefield. What did the text say?
Ring the police, and straight away I went, that is weird, that's not right.
Police arrived to a bloodbath. Dennis Wakefield had stabbed Beth twice in the neck with a boning knife. He then stabbed himself.
Mum was in bed asleep. He's come up to the side of the bed, stabbed Mum in the neck. A fight has started. Mum had defensive wounds on her hands from trying to stop him with the knife. He's then cut her arteries and she's bled out in bed.
Beth was dead, but Wakefield was still alive. He was rushed to hospital for emergency surgery. That day, police charged Wakefield with murder. At home, police discovered Wakefield's suicide note, and in the bin, 3 earlier drafts of it.
He's had plenty of time to realise what he was doing and, knowing that it's wrong, to stop.
Recovering in hospital, Wakefield refused to be interviewed by police, so Aaron Stavely was asked to ring him. Detectives recorded the conversation in the hope he would admit to the killing.
Straight away he said, I suppose the police are listening to this conversation. And then he said to me, he goes, look, I'm sorry, your mum was great, she was a really good sport, and, you know, I wasn't going to kill her, but in the last 5 seconds, I decided that it'd be better if I took her with me so she wouldn't have to live with the mess.
Within hours of that phone call, Dennis Wakefield admitted to the police that he had killed Beth. It seemed like a straightforward case. But then 2 months later, in August 2014, Aaron and Jason Stavely learned that he would not be facing criminal trial for murder. Instead, his case was diverted to the Queensland Mental Health Court. What have the police told you about what they think of this decision?
They're not happy. They don't think it's the right decision.
One of the detectives said to me that he can't believe that it had gone that way.
Like most people, Aaron and Jason had never heard of the Queensland Mental Health Court. It's the only one of its kind in Australia. It falls under the umbrella of the Queensland Health Department and is entirely separate from the criminal justice system. Cases are heard by a judge and 2 psychiatrists, but there's no jury.
As soon as somebody receives a mental health defence for killing somebody, the walls immediately go up.
Like the Stavely family, Sonia Anderson was furious when her daughter's killer, Rhys Austin, was initially charged with murder, but then avoided a criminal trial. Instead, the Mental Health Court decided Austin was mentally unsound and wasn't responsible for his actions when he strangled Bianca Gervin to death. It's likely Rhys Austin is now back out in the community. Do you think that Rhys understood that what he was doing to Bianca was wrong?
Absolutely. I believe he absolutely knew it and understood it, that it was deemed wrong by community, but he was okay with it, and I know he knew the difference.
Rhys Austin and Dennis Wakefield were both found to be mentally unsound at the time they killed, which meant that under Queensland's system, they became patients, not criminals. Neither went to prison, but instead they received treatment for their mental illness.
I don't have faith in the system. I believed in the justice system and the mental health system, but I've lived this for almost 7 years and I don't have faith, unfortunately. I'd like to. Somebody prove me wrong, please.
We're not doing justice to the claims of the family and victims.
Retired New South Wales Supreme Court Judge Anthony Wooley says that unlike the rest of the country, the Queensland system has strayed too far from criminal justice.
The main characteristics of a criminal justice system is that they are designed to punish people who are guilty of crimes. They are there to protect the community, and they are there to deter people from offending or re-offending. So once you have a system like that move sideways, then you have a very big gap. And that's the difficulty here, I think.
We know how the court system works, but this is a whole new world. It was like it was a done deal.
Dennis Wakefield's hearing before the Mental Health Court took a mere 30 minutes. The judge accepted 4 psychiatrists' reports saying that Wakefield had suffered major depression. But Jason and Aaron Stavely were shocked it was all over so quickly.
I think a lot of people in this country suffer from depression, and we've got a lot of trouble on our hands if someone suffering from depression is doing what Dennis has done.
Because we've known the guy for 20 odd years, and had there been any diagnosis from the family doctor, any worrying aspects, we would have gone, yeah, that's fair. But in the years leading up to this, not a jot, nothing.
Nothing.
Do you believe that he understood what he was doing?
He apologised. He knew it was wrong.
From the moment that the Mental Health Court deemed Dennis Wakefield to have been of unsound mind, the law has protected him. But what about the rights of the victim's family? They're gagged from revealing what they know about Dennis Wakefield's care and control inside the mental health system. And so are we in the media. What we are allowed to tell you is that 15 months on from his hearing, Dennis Wakefield is now allowed out in the community, full-time and unsupervised.
He's out. He's on the street.
He's living beside somebody somewhere.
When we found Dennis Wakefield living at the Salvo's Riverview Gardens, the management was not aware they had a recent killer as a resident. But when we told them, they removed him from the home and sent out this letter to the other residents. In it, they blame the Queensland Health Department, which oversees the Mental Health Court, for failing to alert them to Wakefield's violent past, and they promise it'll never happen again. But that's a promise they can't hope to keep. You see, the law requires the Queensland Government to protect the privacy of patients like Dennis Wakefield, even if it potentially endangers the community. And what's potentially dangerous to the community now is that we don't know where in the community Mr. Wakefield has been relocated.
I think the fact that it goes on behind a veil of secrecy makes it even worse, if that's possible. I mean, we have to deal with the loss of our mum and the kid's grandmother, but we don't know anything about the process.
He is protected. He is protected, and we are given nothing.
Well, everybody's gagged, really, and it seems that the whole focus and thrust is to prevent information getting out to the public as much as possible.
Anthony Wooley is critical of the secrecy surrounding Queensland's mental health laws.
Are the interests of the patient in a mental illness case overriding the community's interest in knowing what's going on? It's not just the individual's right to speak out, it's the community's right to know what is happening.
Went out of her way to be happy.
For Jason and Aaron Stavely,
And the garden club crew?
it's been less than 3 years since their mother was brutally killed. While their grief is still raw, they refuse to give up their fight for justice.
There's something wrong with the system that says you're not guilty of a crime, so let's totally forget about the severity of that crime and put you back out on the street.
That's your biggest concern. If he was insane at the time that he committed this dreadful act, how can he be safe enough now to be out in the community?
It seems like a very swift recovery. Either a very, very swift recovery or a system that fast-tracks people out of it as quickly as possible with no thought for the severity of the crime that's been committed.